This is Note-Taking Guide 6.3 for Math 1. So again, we're in our geometry unit. We're starting to learn how to do some stuff with some algebra and geometry at the same time. Today we're going to focus on the distance and midpoint formula. One thing that we probably need to make sure that we do before we get started is notice the distance and midpoint formula up in the right-hand corner of our note-taking guide. I'm going to write those down for us in just a minute when we need to use them, but notice that they're up there when you need to use them, and I'm not here to give them to you. So this first problem right here says use the number line to find the distance between point A and B. So from A to B. Really, when it's on the number line like that, we can usually count it. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can count the distance on a number line. Normally it's nice when it goes from tick mark to tick mark like this, but this one was halfway in between, so I just made sure when I counted, I went to halfway in between again. So what the distance is the length between 2 points. So now we're going to do it on a coordinate plane. The problem is that our tick marks are going through the corners of the graph, which is the diagonals, instead of from the straight line to the straight line. So we actually have to figure these out in a different way. So when they're on a coordinate plane like this, one of the things that I like to do is instead of using the distance formula, I like to make this a right triangle. And I can tell now that this side over here measures 1, 2, 3. So this side measures 3. This side is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then instead of using the distance formula, I just do the Pythagorean theorem, which is something that we learned a long time ago. That Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It always works for solving the missing side of a right triangle. So I'm going to go 3 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. 3 squared is 9. 5 squared is 25. Those add together to be 34. And then when I square root 34, I get a decimal point number, which is 5.83. So that's how you've probably been taught in the past to do midpoint. I'm sorry, not midpoint, distance. Now though, if we wanted to, and you'll be able to tell that this formula is derived from the Pythagorean theorem because it's got the squareds in it and everything. But the distance formula is actually x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Gosh, you can't read that. Let me try that one more time. It's distance equals the square root of x2 minus x1 plus y2 minus y1 squared. And that's the distance formula. So we can do the same thing using the distance formula. We would just have to have the ordered pairs to plug in. This ordered pair is 0, 0. And then this ordered pair is 3, 5. And we would just plug them in. This would be x from my first ordered pair, y from my first ordered pair, x from my second ordered pair, y from my second ordered pair. And I just plug them into the formula. So it would be d equals the square root of x2 minus x1. So 5 minus 0, which is just going to be 5 squared. And then I just did my y's there and I should have done my x's. Okay, backtrack. Let's go get my y's. My x's. My 3 has to go first there. So 3 minus 0 is 3. So it'll be 3 squared. And then 5 minus 0 is 5 squared. So this is actually 9 plus 25, which is 34 again. And then my distance is equal to 5.83, just like it was before. So as you can see, that's kind of why I like to do it with the Pythagorean theorem, because the distance formula can be messy, especially if you don't have enough room on your paper to write. So, but here's this one. We're going to plug it in the distance formula. It says find the distance, and I'm going to try to write this a lot nicer. So our distance formula is, it's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And then you just have to, this is my x1 and my y1. This is my x2 and my y2. And I'm just going to substitute them in. So x2, which is 18, minus x1, which is 6. And then we'll square that. And then we'll do y2, which is 12, minus y1, which is 3. And then we'll square that. I'm actually going to plug that in my calculator the exact way it is. I'm going to do the square root key. Then I'm going to do parentheses and go 18 minus 6. Close my parentheses, hit my squared key, push my plus sign, open my parentheses, 12 minus 3, close my parentheses, hit my squared sign, and then just put, let the calculator do it. My calculator gives me the number of 15 for the distance on that. So I would just recommend that you guys, that you totally just let your calculator do the work on those. They work out really nice. All right, this next one says, find the distance and the midpoint between the points, round to the nearest tenth. So we're doing distance and we're doing midpoint from B to C. So B to C is a straight line, which means that we can count it for distance, which is nice. So distance, we're just going to count how many tick marks there were. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So our distance is 4. Our midpoint, on the other hand, it shouldn't be too hard to count either. We would just find the middle. But I just want to remind you that we have that midpoint formula. It's x1 plus x2 over 2, and then y1 plus y2 over 2. So really what you're doing is you're adding your x's together and dividing by 2, and then adding your y's together and dividing by 2. So if we had our ordered pairs, we could just kind of do that quickly. So this ordered pair is 3, 1, and this ordered pair is 3, negative 3. So we would add our x values together. 3 plus 3 is 6, and 6 divided by 2 would be our value for our first part of our ordered pair. Then we add our back ones together. So 1 and a negative 3 make a negative 2. Negative 2 would be divided by 2 would be negative 1. So our midpoint is the actual ordered pair that would be the middle of these two. And you can see if that would make sense or not. If you're over 3 and down 1, is that the midpoint between those two spots? And it looks like it is, so we did good on our math. Okay, last one here says, find the missing endpoint B. The coordinates of A are 4, 3. The midpoint of AB has the coordinates of 10 and 6. So again, just to remind you that midpoint formula, you take your x1 and you add it with your x2 and divide it by 2. Your y1 and your y2 and divide it by 2. That's how you get your midpoint. So this time it gave me an endpoint, which is one of my x and y coordinates. It actually gave me the midpoint this time. So as far as this goes, I have one of my x values, which is 4, but I don't have the other x value. But I know when I divide that by 2, I'm going to equal to 10. So then I'm just going to solve that and figure it out. So get rid of the 2 off the bottom by timesing both sides by 2. And I get 20 equals 4 plus x minus the 4 over. And I get x equals 16. So that's the first part of my ordered pair is 16. Now I have to do the same thing for my y's. So on my y's in my formula, I'd have 3 plus y divided by 2. And then it would be equal to my midpoint value, which is 6. And then I would solve that. I'd have to times both sides by 2 to get rid of the 2. So I'd get 12 equals 3 plus y minus the 3 to the other side. And I get y equals 9. So the endpoint, the other endpoint for my values that they gave me is 16 and 9. Guys, come and see me if you have some questions. I'm happy to help. Good luck with your homework.